Okay. We see there are a few people in the room, so thanks for joining the meeting tonight. This is a session to explain the water rate detail and information in preparation for the July 1st City Council public hearing on this 5-year rate adjustment. I say adjustment. It is a rate increase for wastewater, and for water, there'll be some customers that'll see a drop in rates, and some that'll see an increase. In general, though, the average residential customer will see a rate increase. So we're going to go over the background, purpose, and need. We have the finance department director and her staff on the panel here tonight. The way this is set up, you can type in questions or call in questions, and we'll try to get to those one by one. If you're calling, you can try 822-8184. Or if you look at the bottom of the screen, there's a place for you to type in your question, and we'll get to them that way too. So we want to make sure there's plenty of time for that. We apologize for this format. Instead of, a meeting in City Hall with you all the interested parties to have a face-to-face, but it's what we have to work with right now. We do have another session on June 2nd at 10:30 a.m. We'll go over the same material. And I just wanted to, I'm going to share my screen here to show on the city's website, environmental services, water, wastewater. We have put a lot of background information dealing with the rate adjustment notice and the hearing. We've added some of the staff reports from the past council meetings. Tomorrow we'll add a tech, I call it tech memo, but it's a tech memo for some of the high strength calculations that our consultants, Bartle Wells and Associates, developed for one particular rate. It's more of a commercial significant strength rate. So that'll be in there tomorrow. And yeah, but so we'll start with the background, really. Let me get to bear with me. This is a PowerPoint presented to the City Council by Bartle Wells and Associates. It's the first time in a very long time that we hired an outside consultant to really go over all of our detailed information, our financial records, our cost of service for providing water and wastewater delivery to the citizens of the town. Most people know we charge for the cost of providing the service. We can't charge more than that, but we have to provide enough revenue to adequately provide the service. We have a lot of regulations, especially on the wastewater side for discharge to Humboldt Bay that we have to meet. We initially were looking to tackle how we're going to finance some large capital project, which is the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. I'm just going to hit a couple highlights of what that's about. And it's approximately $60 million upgrade for a treatment plant that's more than 40 years old, some components 60 years old, that are in dire need of replacement. At the same time, we have new regulatory requirements for discharge to Humboldt Bay to improve water quality. Ultimately, that's what the project will do. A big feature there is changing from chlorine disinfection to ultraviolet light disinfection. We were able to get a $3 million grant for the ultraviolet unit. It looks like we're going to receive some $6 to $7 million grant for the other part of the 60 million, but that leaves a significant amount to finance. We have some reserves, but we are going to rely on low interest loans from the state of California, called state revolving loan, 1.8%, good interest rate. But for us to qualify for the loans, for the debt service, for upgrading the treatment plant, we have to show that we have the ability to service that debt through this rate study, through this 5-year rate increase. That's the purpose, really driving this right now, the capital project. So the consultants. Sorry. There we go. Good. Went over the cost of service for 5 years and gave us some alternatives to kind of realign, our past adjustments that we've done and meet California's legal requirements. For that, on the water side, there is some recent case law where cities are now being required to charge the same for water delivery across all the sectors in terms of just the water itself, meaning commercial, residential, industrial. So that'll all be recalibrated. That's why you see the largest increase for water the first year. After that, it's 1.5% for the next 4 years. So pretty flat after that. That's just getting the city recalibrated, so we're charging everybody the same for the water consumption. So I'll go with water first. All our rates are regulated by Proposition 218, meaning it's a property-related fee. We have to charge the cost of providing the service, and part of this new rate analysis also showed that we are going to now be charging for our own city uses. For example, sports field irrigation, parks, and community center city facilities will now be charged for water as well. And we are relating our fixed charges based on meters to, we're realigning them with these factors from the American Water Works Association, which we had done 20 years ago, but they've changed slightly over time. So those are being realigned. There you go. Currently, we're charging a little different outside the city as inside the city. The new proposed rates are lining those up so they're the same for the water consumption side. But the good news about the water utility, it's in great financial health. It's got a decent reserve. And once we realign the rates, like I mentioned before, to be properly lined up for all sectors, we're not going to look at a big increase for the next future, or for the next foreseeable future. We do purchase water from the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District. That's about $1.35 million per year. That's just flat out purchase from them. We are a municipal member of, or customer, I should say. And we expect that to stay about the same, or maybe go up 3 or 4% within, any one of these years. We don't expect a big change there. For water, some of our big needs on the capital side have to do with some major water line replacements and building a new water tank east of West End Road. We're calling it Tank 1C, and that'll be a 1 million gallon tank. And really, for that, we noticed several years ago, downtown fires, we got perilously close to running out of water. So for an emergency backup, this is greatly needed to have that buffer for an emergency. for fire, earthquake, or something like that to have a little bit of a buffer. That new tank will also allow us to pump more water to fill that tank and others during off-peak power times, which is a lot cheaper electricity rates at night. Right now, water rates are about 20% fixed based on the meter, and the rest is based on usage. And like I mentioned, equal volume charges for all customer classes and all water use is what's being accomplished here. So I think this is, pull up the mailer that went out to everybody. Yeah, $6.74 for the year fiscal year 2021 is the proposed volume charge. Currently, it's based on consumption of different categories. Let me bring that in the screen here real quick and point to what I'm talking about. So this is 2021. It'll be $6.74 no matter how much you use, no matter if you're just outside the city limits in Jacoby Creek, which we serve some out there, or not. This is the next year, 21, 22. This is 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25. So this is just lining these all up to be the same. And it's kind of shifting where our rates, the revenue comes from. It'll be 80% on the volume side and 20% on the fixed meter side. Equal charges for all classes. Oops. So in Arcata, the proposed rates that were mailed to everybody, you can look in the middle here. Single tier with no phase in. The phase in was just an option to kind of dip into our reserves, and the council chose not to do that. So this is the average single family rate, and you can see some other cities in the region. I know some of them are undergoing similar rate studies and probably will be changing their rates too. So the Arcata current average is 28. That'll go to 38. And then stay kind of flat for a few years. I apologize for this lengthy notice that we send everybody. I assume on this meeting or this workshop received this in the mail. And just to remind everybody, this hearing is July 1st, 6 p.m. Here's the link to it. It's likely it'll be a similar, well, it'll be a city council hearing where you can participate. It's important if you do wish to protest these rates and you own property, or you pay the utilities for that property, say as a tenant, for example. Oh, okay. That you, in writing, send the city a letter, a protest letter, or drop it off at City Hall, and make sure you indicate the address and parcel, the APN number, assessor's parcel number, if you can do that. So let me just scroll down a little bit. To wastewater, but first I'll show this one. Okay. Right now, people who pay for wastewater in the city see a $5 sewer charge called out on their bills. That sunsets. It's a sewer repair fee. That'll go away in the fiscal year 22-23. So all the rates we're talking about here will not account for that $5. That's going to come off what you're used to seeing. So that'll be a reduction when that year hits. So in the terms of wastewater rates, they're not all equal. In terms of residential and commercial, there's a different base rate, and there is a different rate based on strength. Strength has to do with what's in the water in terms of what causing us to have to treat more intensively. Food waste, organics. High strength usually is from restaurants, bakeries, food manufacturing, bars, hotels, hospitals. They are in the medium strength category, so it's tiered that way. And like I mentioned, for five-year financial projection, our consultants went through the finance department's enterprise fund records and what we project we're going to be spending, and developed rates over the 5-year period to provide for operation maintenance as well as the capital needs. With a 3% built-in operation cost increase, which is to account for inflation primarily. And this is at the same time maintaining a cash reserve of 30%. So here's the proposed rates for the typical single family bill, with a 10% increase in 2021, which is the fiscal year starting this year. 10% 21-22, 10% 22-23, and then 8% the next 2 years. Just to back up for a minute, I mean, the City Council, recognizing the current situation with COVID-19, typically our rate increases and all our new fees and our fee schedule for the city go into effect July 1st of the new fiscal year. That's when our fiscal year starts. They voted to delay implementation of the water rates until September 1st, and then for wastewater until January 1st of the next year, 2021. So if approved at the hearing, that's how the rates will go into effect. Delayed, basically. Let's see. I'm just going to get to the chart, but first the capital improvement. There's the big driver for the need for wastewater rate increases. We have 2 phases on the wastewater side. You can see 31 million, 33 million. We have some levee improvements that surround the treatment plant. And we still have our network, our collection system and pipes to repair and replace over a 5-year period. We just, our contractors in our engineering division and our utilities division of environmental services just completed a $7 million primarily grant funded sewer lining project in the city. That was fantastic because what that does is it lessens the amount of inflow and infiltration that we have to pump and treat, so it'll lower our operation costs, based on that, the sewer lining project. That was awesome to have that much grant funding go into that project. So with the proposed rates that are in the notice, Arcata's current rates average, single family resident average is about 54. And for 2021, that would go up to 59.99, call it 60. So this chart's just showing the first year of the effect of these rates. If you add water and sewer together in this chart, it is going to be this one here, because we didn't do this phase in. Here's the current 82 combined water and sewer, and here is the effect with those two combined for the first year. And you can see some other cities in our area where that compares. Eureka, that puts us close to where they are. Crescent City, Humboldt Community Services District, McKinleyville, and Fortuna are less. Average is 93, so it puts us a little over that. Okay, this is I want to make sure we get time for questions, but I mentioned hold public outreach and engagement. That's what we're trying to do tonight, and we can also show you a snapshot of a bill, and we have that ready too, so you can actually see what the effect would have on your particular either business or home. I should say the noticed rates that we mailed out are the maximum the council can adopt each year, and there is an option. Say our bids come in less than anticipated from the engineer's estimate for the treatment plant upgrade. They can choose in those future years to have less of an increase, but not more without another hearing. So don't know if that'll happen for sure, but that's a possibility. So let me get to this sheet again. This is what we mailed, and here again it shows the combined monthly charge for year one and how we compare to other cities for water and sewer. That's the same numbers as I showed it that was on the graph. Okay, we have some questions coming in. That's great. That's why we're here. So bear with me for a moment. Okay, question. On the city's website, one written protest will be counted for each parcel mandated to comply with the proposed rates. For a multifamily and commercial property with multiple rate-paying tenants, will only one parcel protest be counted, or will our tenants' voices be counted? So that's a good question. Whether, say you have 20 units on a particular property, one protest per parcel, but so you can't double counts. So that's the way I understand it. So okay, where's the letter you just mentioned? Okay, let me get that. Okay, I'm hoping this is legible. Also, you're on the wrong screen, the entire presentation. Do you know what that means?
That was just the presentations.
All right. This is the letter that was mailed to all ratepayers and or property owners. If they were one and the same, then they didn't hopefully get more than one bill. Some might have if they own more than one property. So this is the notice that was mailed a couple weeks ago, I believe now. Another question, didn't the city raise rates in 2014? Yeah, there was last year there was just a consumer price index or inflation raise for water and sewer. In 2014, yes, and that is why our reserves are in pretty healthy condition, and we've done a lot of projects with that rate increase too since then. So, but it wasn't enough to build the entire upgrade process. That now that we have the design, we have the engineering plan, we know what the total cost will be. But yes, that provided quite a bit, and some of that was used for upgrades that have happened to date. Okay, aerators. When will the aerators go into the treatment area? That will be this year or the end of this year for the oxidation ponds. And that part is being paid from the rate increase from 2014 that went into reserve. So we are actually doing some of the upgrades near term, and then some, will be phased in. So new aerators, hope I'm not clogging up the screen here. New aerators will allow the oxidation ponds to hopefully burn up a lot of the accumulated legacy sludge that's there and increase or improve the water quality from the oxidation ponds. With HSU not in service this fall, water wastewater use will be down. Can we use this time to figure out the future? That's a good question. With our revenues may show an effect for sure on that. On one hand, we use less energy, right, for pumping, but on the other hand, without our largest customer, HSU, using water and sewer, it affects how much revenue the city receives. A lot of things are fixed. It's not a one-to-one relationship on the water use and the costs of providing the service. But we are monitoring HSU very closely to see what effect that will have on our rates in terms of our revenue, I should say. I'm glad we're getting a lot of great questions, by the way. Thank you for dialing in. Okay. How have McKinleyville and Fortuna been able to keep rates so low compared to Arcata? That's a good question, and it's one that I might have to post on our Q&A after this meeting. It's a different situation there. They've, you know, for one thing, in McKinleyville, their plant is a lot newer than Arcata's. Our headworks is old. That's our heart and soul of our treatment plant, and that has to be replaced. If it fails, it'd be catastrophic. So we have older infrastructure. So that's maybe part of the reason. Fortuna, I believe they were able to. I don't want to speak for Fortuna right now, but I will find out. I'll talk to their city manager about that, because I have heard that others are doing the similar rate increases, or not rate increases, but analyses of their rate structures. 20% of small businesses are expected to close due to COVID. Unemployment is the highest it's been since the Great Depression. How can you justify raising rates? That's a good question. We've been working on the treatment plant upgrade project for several years. We've had workshops. We spent considerable time trying to get the best bang for the buck in terms of the upgrade project. We probably spent a couple extra years just torturing our consultants to come up with, you know, a design that was as cost effective as possible. So we didn't anticipate, nobody did, this situation that we're currently in. The council did choose to defer this rate increase. There are certain things driving the treatment plant upgrade that are regulatory, I mentioned before, in terms of meeting regulatory requirements. So there's risk to deferring that too much longer. There's risk to not replacing infrastructure. So we have to weigh those things. So one reason we have two phases instead of one large contract to just replace the treatment plant was to try some things in phase one that could inform phase two and potentially reduce costs for that. We think that's a prudent way to go. We're hoping that the end price will be less as we see the effect of some of these phase one improvements. So it'll be a process there. There's a chance that'll influence the rates in the last year or two of the 5-year period. But you know, yeah, it's the largest piece of infrastructure the city has by far, the wastewater treatment plant. We don't take rate increases lightly, that's for sure. So that's why we hired a consultant to help us engineer the improvements, and to look at our books, look at the fiscal health and our ability to pay, and to make sure that we're responsible, you know, and in the future, and not being overly optimistic about what things will cost, because it's hard to know what the next 5 years will bring. Hopefully this is a temporary setback and things will improve. But we still think the rates are comparable with what most other cities in the region are paying. It's not we're not going to be an outlier, I should say there. Another question, it seems like a bonus for water and wastewater to have HSU off this fall. Not really. I mean, the revenue is important. So, you know, we'll have to adjust our, you know, anticipated, you know, revenue and savings for capital projects based on the use. I mean, we do encourage conservation. You know, that's one way to save on your rates, and it's a good thing to do. It's less energy use for the city in pumping and treating. So conservation is something we do encourage. But having a lower population, it's a fixed. How do I put it this way? It's an economy of scale. You know, a treatment plant's a big component. The more that are hooked up to it, the more we can spread the costs for maintaining and replacing it. Okay. Why do we have to assume all the burden of past mistakes? Most businesses are expecting 3% growth yearly. Year increases are much higher. Where's the balance? Hasn't the EPA lightened up due to COVID? So far, we haven't seen regulations change. There may be some a longer period that we can defer. Or I mean, we have a 5-year permit with the state, and we have a time schedule order for implementing that permit. And the main aspects of that permit have to do with moving our discharge point from Butcher Slough to Daniel Slough, dealing with ammonia for the first time in terms of, we have a limit for ammonia, and that we don't have that now, but that's in our new permit. And we've had quite a few violations that caused us, well, I should say we have $366,000 in fines or liabilities. Fortunately, we're going to be able to use that towards our improvement project, so it's not money that's out the window completely. But no city likes to have a treatment plant that has issues like that in terms of not meeting compliance. In terms of past mistakes, I think, well, the city has done its best to create a reserve. That 2014 rate increase built up the reserve to the point where we could cover ourselves if we had a big failure, a large lift station, pump station, or some kind of a breakdown, that we had the ability to actually replace it. It's important to have that. And the other question, with multi-tenants on one parcel with each paying their own utilities, shouldn't it be the user? I'm pretty sure it's property related, so there's one per property parcel, so it's not 300 per parcel. And in the event that you can't, for example, even if you had an owner and a tenant, we couldn't count 2 votes if they both filed a protest on that same property. So I think that's the same for a multi, but I'll find out for sure. Okay, I went through most of the questions. There'll be more, I think. So I mentioned, okay, I'm looking for hands raised. Now I do see one. Okay.
You could a participant
Oh, no.
to the left of Q&A.
Okay.
So attendees that go up to the top. So yeah, there's one. So you can allow me to talk.
Can do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a Joshua Shabani, and I have you able to talk now. So can you hear me? Joshua, you're on.
All righty. My question was, I also put it in the chat, which I think I just got knocked out of. Is there any way of not front loading as much of the costs into year one?
For wastewater, they aren't as front loaded. You mean that's the 10% increase. Water has the biggest, I think it goes up 37% in year one, and that's just to achieve that parity, that fairness that our consultants, told us due to case law in the state of California, where we couldn't have differential rates, so we had to charge the same for everybody. So for wastewater, 10%, 10%, 10%, 8 and 8 is how it's structured to try to even that out as much as possible. So if are you referring to that? Why have 10 in year one? It's due to the fact that we're thinking of the construction season of 21, 22 being where we start spending quite a bit of money as the bid documents are released. We're still in the environmental and the permitting phase right now, by the way.
It was more about the 37% increase.
Oh, for water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you articulate why that has to be front loaded to the first year? Because, especially given the conditions of right now and the uncertainty of everything, that's kind of a big hit.
Yeah. So you don't get tired of hearing me talk all night. I might try to get Andrea Trubetsky, our finance director, can you talk about that one, Andrea? Let's see if I can get you. By the way, the rate increase for water, our revenues aren't really going up in total. It's just achieving that parity. Does that make sense?
No. Can you articulate that a little bit better?
Okay. Well, the rate's going to go up for some and down for others. So let me see if I can get Andrea. There you go. Okay. Hi, Andrea.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I guess just to answer the first part of our viewer's question related to the phase in of the rate change on the water side. So we did propose that option to our rate consultants, Bartle and Wells, and what they did in doing that, they did provide us some feedback on doing so and recommended that we change the structure at one time in accordance with 218 to not necessarily phase in the recommended changes. But we also have, but we also did have them go back just to propose if we tried to phase in the increase to relieve the customers. And in doing so, we proposed to council a couple of different phase-in options, which would end up drawing down on our fund balance. So when we proposed that to council, I believe, I don't want to speak on their behalf, but they chose to go with a non-phase-in option in order to preserve our reserves. They did consider the fact that we had COVID-19 taking place as well. And as Mark previously stated, they have chosen to delay the rate increases, but did not go with the initial phase-in option to draw down on the reserves. But I believe, like I said, from our rate consultants, that wasn't necessarily recommended because we're trying to restructure our base rates and our consumption rates in accordance with best practices in the industry. And that phase-in isn't necessarily best practice, but it was something that could offer a little bit of customer relief. But that was not chosen by our council to do so.
And when was that initial proposal created?
So that was created, I believe we presented that back at one of our March council meetings. So we do have that information available on our website, and I can do a little bit of research after this to get that posted. But if you do go to our website for our live meetings and our minutes, we do have that out there for what that phase-in looked like and what the relief would have been, or the drawdown on the reserves for the water side. And we proposed, I believe it was no phase-in, and then I think it was 2 other scenarios for what the fund balance drawdown would be.
Yeah, because it's pretty steep, over the course of this, especially given all the circumstances. And just, again, that projection was created in March before we really had any decent understanding that we're probably going to be in the long haul for this for a little bit, right? So just a thought as a consumer here. So I appreciate your explanations. It's just a little concerning.
Understandable.
All right, thank you.
That's a good question. Another question came in about how did we choose the firm who did the rate study, Bartle Wells and Associates. We did a request for proposal. I think we got 3, and we interviewed them. And Bartle Wells was also recommended by our wastewater treatment plant firm as a good firm to go with. That's Carollo Engineers out of Walnut Creek that's doing that part of our project, our treatment plant design. They did our facility plan too, which was basically an audit of our entire system, looking at everything to point out deficiencies. That was really healthy for us to go through that audit. The facility plan set the stage for the alternatives for improvements, which are now in the design phase and permitting. So we chose that firm based on interviewing them, their clients that they've worked for in the past. We talked to other cities they'd worked for, and they were highly regarded. And they also, came with professional engineers that not only financial, specialists. So that's how we chose that firm. Let me make sure I answered everything that came through texts. Thanks for pointing out I was on the wrong screen. I have 2 screens, so I want to make sure I don't accidentally share the wrong screen. I know I'm paused right now. Yeah, there's a lot of questions about the number of protests. In terms of how the protest works, it's if the majority of the property owners in the city plus 1, register a protest, then rate increases don't happen. I know our city council is sensitive to the ratepayers' concerns, and we're going to relay all of that to them at the hearing from this session, and update them along the way. They have been supportive of infrastructure over the years. Just due to the fact that I think we've done our homework to show the need, the purpose and the need. If you don't invest in it, you have catastrophic failures. That's the scenario you don't want to have in the city. And it's important for future growth. A city that doesn't pay attention to its wastewater treatment plant, for example, can be slapped with a cease and desist order on new building permits. That's happened in California. Permit violations, which we have some. I wouldn't say it's horrible, but we don't want to have any, especially discharging to a sensitive habitat like Humboldt Bay. But you can't just violate and pass that kind of cost of business on like that. So, I think the design that we have for the treatment plant is a elegant solution because it combines the wetlands that we have, gets the most from them, and gets rid of chlorine, which is has disinfection byproducts that can be problematic in the environment. Gets rid of chlorine that also is a community hazard in the event of a large earthquake, tsunami, or event like that if they were ruptured, we have a bunch of tanks down there. It eliminates the employee handling hazard of a toxic gas like that. So that's an environmental benefit. Ultraviolet light also is superior in disinfecting viruses and bacteria, and what we're going to have down there will zap any bug, and there won't be anything, any mistakes in terms of jeopardizing Humboldt Bay, the shellfish industry, in terms of bacteria or virus counts. What else about the treatment plant design? Oh, it gets the most out of the wetlands, which are very energy, efficient, provide habitat. I mentioned ammonia before. That's in phase 2, building an oxidation ditch, which gets us, in compliance on ammonia, among other things. But really what that oxidation ditch is, it's the equivalent to having acres and acres and acres of additional ponds that we don't have room for. It's really a concrete, oval, high rate treatment in a box, the equivalent to having, more oxidation ponds. So we're space limited in that regard down there. Let me check. Okay.
Another question? Yep, checking.
All right. The Zoom meeting seems inadequate for proposed rate increase. Can this meeting be delayed? What if people do not have internet, or what if, can they have a voice? But I agree. I mean, it's not the ideal way to have a public hearing. I'm looking at cities. Well, we're doing the same thing on our budget, which is not the ideal for the city's budget process. Every city in California and every state is going through its annual budget making process, and there's no substitute for face-to-face interaction of the citizenry and the city council in a room. We're doing our best to substitute, but it's not equivalent. In terms of delaying the hearing, the hearing's noticed. The council has choices. They could hold the hearing. They could continue it. They could continue it. They could respond to the input they get in writing, and they could respond to questions they get or through the internet, like we're doing tonight. For people that don't have internet access, I know that's tough. I'm assuming on July 1st, we won't have the city hall open for a hearing. I don't know for sure. We'll have to stay tuned for that, but it'll be different. That's for sure. If it is open, but it's unlikely to be. We are opening City Hall for the business under soon for building permits and other things, but we have guidelines we have to adhere to from public health on distancing and things of that nature. In terms of deferring, it's unfortunate timing. Like I mentioned, our permit 5 years ago, we're on an extension from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. They've been able to grant us that extension. So really, in terms of our upgrades, they're more than 5 years overdue. So we're, I'm not sure how much we can put that off, really. And I think we have a good plan. We have low interest rates. We have a solid, design team, and I think a good solution, for the future, for the city to have a great wastewater treatment plant where we don't have to be concerned about compliance issues and capacity issues, because we have both right now. Okay, I know Andrea and Darcy had a sample bill, and they actually created a Excel spreadsheet where you could plug in your numbers and compare. Is that something Darcy or Andrea, if you'd like to display, or I can bring it up. Oh, another question. Is Darcy there? Let's see. Darcy or Andrea?
Hi, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I finally got you going. Yeah.
Hi, this is Darcy. I would say you could go ahead and share the examples of those bills. I think we had a residential bill and a commercial bill, and it's not with the new rates per se, but it's just for customers, you know, who want to better understand what the bill looks like and how they can apply the proposed rates to their current bill. And as far as the calculator, if anybody who's joining this meeting would like us to calculate their proposed bill for them, they could give us a call rather than share that, because it is a little confusing.
Okay, let me. Is this the one?
Yeah, so this is, let's see, it's a little big on your screen right now. This is just an example of a residential bill. So if customers aren't sure what size water meter they have, you can see that listed under current charges. So that first charge is for the base rate, and that is based on meter size. And so all of the proposed information was included on the mailer, which is why it was quite long, because we do have several different meter sizes and different classes of rates. And then the second line, water consumption, that is based on the usage, which you can see on the second category down on the right under meter reading. So for the proposed rates, you could take your typical usage, and that would be multiplied by $6.74. And that's going to give you what the water consumption total will be. And then the sewer base, again, it's going to tell you what category you're in. So this is a residential base rate. And then the sewer consumption, that is based on the water usage. So in this example, we do not charge sewer consumption charges until you get past 4 units of water consumption. So you can see the sewer consumption is 0. But again, if you're past 4, you would just subtract 4 from the usage and then multiply that by the sewer consumption rate. And then you'll see the sewer repair fee, which Mark explained, that's on everybody's bill once a month until it sunsets. And then utility users tax is 3%, and that is applied to everything except that sewer repair fee. So anybody can look at their bill. We have the water usage summary chart there where you can get a picture of what your typical usage is. And then based on the information that was on the mailer, you can determine what your bills will look like moving forward. And if anybody wants any assistance with that, we're happy to help in the finance department. You can feel free to give us a call. We have a couple people here on site that we can help walk you through your bill or any other working day from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. We are here answering the phone.
Okay, if anybody has a question on that, feel free to type it in now, or I guess raise your hand, and that's another way. I can put you on live, if you like. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. What did I put on? Okay, there's a question about energy use. So bear with me here. Okay, why don't you ask that question, Alex Stillman? I just, sorry, it's been on there for a while and I didn't see it at the bottom.
My question was that I know the oxidation ditch is going to be very high energy wise. And I know that you're concerned, the city of Arcata city council members are really concerned about energy use. My question is though, when are you going to find a new location to put the sewer treatment plant?
Yeah, I'm just going to point to the oxidation ditch here. This is the sewer treatment plant here. I think I'm sharing the screen. This is oxidation pond 2 and 1.
We
No.
can't see it, Mark.
Okay, sorry. It says that I'm sharing it, but
So we can minimize the water bill.
new share.
There you go.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
All right. That's the oval oxidation ditch. There's two being designed. One is probably what we think we'll need. This would be in the distant future if we needed another one. Oxidation pond 2, oxidation pond 1, these are treatment marshes here. And the UV system would go here. These are new clarifiers that go with the oxidation ditches. Those are new components. At the same time, we're replacing existing components that are 40 to 60 years old. The question about energy use, yeah, that's why originally when the consultants prescribed 2 oxidation ditches and not investing in the wetlands, we didn't like that. So we wanted to have the wetlands run as long as they could for the energy effectiveness, for the added habitat value that's provided for a lot of reasons. And plus they're effective. In terms of the treatment plant in the future, we spent a lot of time with City Council public workshops on that issue in terms of sea level rise, which we are definitely thinking about. Typically, you know, an investment in a treatment plant has a 30 to kind of 50-year viability. We believe this investment will achieve that in the future. It's likely that we will shrink the footprint of the treatment plant to be a lot smaller, and it could have 2 oxidation ditches. And the ponds could end up being high salt marshes that just buffer the treatment plant core to gain some more decades. But eventually, it's possible that we'll have to move treatment plant. But that's still far enough away that we feel like, you know, we'll get the investment, the return on investment compared to moving it now, which would be an exorbitant price to actually move it now. That would be well over $100 million, and we haven't identified a site. So to get an effective use of the plant for 50, 60, 70 more years, it's hard to know really in that period of time, or at the end of that period of time, what the technologies might be for treating wastewater. They probably won't be the exact same as they are today.
So Mark, the oxidation ponds, have you upgraded those? Because there was conversation maybe a year ago that they were going to be updated because they're from the 1960s and you're going to go in and clean them out and make them functional, more functional. I haven't seen anything happen. I'm just curious.
The oxidation ponds, you're not talking about the enhancement, Marcia, you're talking about the, okay.
I'm talking about these two big ones that were part
Yeah.
of the sewer treatment plant in 1960.
Yeah, we're replacing the aerators in this pond this year. We already awarded a bid for that. And we're gonna build a baffle curtain here that will go diagonally here and add more aerators here too. So we are gonna invest in these ponds as part of the upgrade process. This bid was awarded and out of our existing funds from our rate increase from 2014. And some of the other upgrades that we've done were from that too, that previous rate increase, as well as some of our lift station work and sewer line replacement.
I think funds were appropriated several years ago for that, so I'm hoping that happens quickly, and it'd be interesting to see the results. Now, with this whole plan of the oxidation ditches, what will happen to Gearhart? There are three marshes: Hauser, Gearhart, and Allen. Will they be any usable, or will they now be dry?
They're still part of the treatment train. And they're also having upgrades. That's part of the capital improvement. So they're still part of the treatment process.
I remember a year ago or so, the consultant was saying this is the very last thing you would deal with, that you would go oxidation and so forth first. But it seems like these are really beneficial, and that was the original construct of the entire marsh system in the 70s and 80s. Are they still on the forefront, or are they on the back burner?
It's part of the upgrade project. So I wouldn't say it's back burner. You know, it's part of the design and that we're moving forward. Okay, I want to be fair and opening up now that I figured out how to, get people to talk and not just type in. So if anybody wants to raise their hand.
Can I be taken off as a panelist? I think I got lumped into that somehow.
Oh, you're a panelist? Okay.
Yeah, because I have a question for the QA.
So the person who is a panelist who wants to be out.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Josh. Okay.
I don't want to remove them at the. How did he?
Put on hold.
He does have a question in the chat.
Okay. All right, Josh, I think you had a question in the chat.
You see chat, yeah. Not the Q&A section, but the chat section. So if you go back up to the top, where is your chat? You click on more. I'm gonna go right now.
Okay. All right, I'm looking for questions. We'll start talking some more about the project and the process. Here's a close-up of the treatment plant. This has been refined a little bit, but I mentioned the headworks here. This, you know, it's like $7 million. Bam. $7 million. You know, it's just an expensive, you know, infrastructure is expensive of this nature. Here's our chlorine contact basin. So that we're going to keep it just for, you know, in case for a while as we phase out chlorine, but this is where we store all the chlorine. In terms of energy, we did put photovoltaic on this roof. We're going to put some more on some other roofs. So we're trying to offset the best we can on the energy side because, yes, this new infrastructure is going to increase energy and energy costs. The city does purchase 100% renewable portfolio from Redwood Energy Authority. So we have that, at least on the climate side. We're purchasing our electricity, but we're trying to save energy as much as we can. And we're going to be, now that we know the design, we can possibly add some more solar power on some ground mount systems down there and invest in that because the payback is worth the investment. I wanted to show if I have it. Okay. There's the treatment plant. Hauser, Allen, Gearhart ponds. This is the brackish pond. This is the new discharge point. So this is South I Street here. And the new discharge point is going to be here, where I'm circling. Currently, it's here in Butcher's Slough. So that's a major shift. There'll be a lot more bang for the buck in terms of beneficial use for that treated wastewater through the large wetland complex of McDaniel Slough. We designed that project with this element in mind. It's just, you know, 12 years after the fact in terms of when we built this pond for this purpose. So there'll be a lot more beneficial use in that wildlife area at this point than we currently have straight into the bay here at Butcher's Slough. So there's a lot of positive aspects to it. And I know everybody's dialed in tonight mostly to understand the costs and the background of those costs. This website here. Okay, can everybody see this? I hope you can. This is where there's even more information that the consultants provided. I showed the PowerPoint. For example, the wastewater rates study itself. Everybody see that? I hope. Goes into more detail in terms of the analysis that fed that PowerPoint, which was this is going to be hard to see, but it shows all of our line items in the budgets for this is wastewater treatment and the collection system for wastewater, which is the pipe network through the city. Details the capital improvements, the current bond debt load that we have, you know, and the phasing of the improvements. Over 30-year term. And some of our, you know, fund balances. So the finance department spent a lot of time with the consultant, the rate consultant, getting all this information up front, which was essential to being able to go over the city's entire utility to see what kind of a rate increase was necessary and no more than that, but what was necessary and prudent for the upgrade project. So these documents are in there as well, on this website. And I think if we didn't already, we'll just paste that in. So it's available. Let's see, so you can just pluck it. Let's see how I can do that. I'll have Bella. Can you do that, Bella? Just take that link and. But if you Google City of Arcata, environmental services, water, wastewater, you'll get there. So.
Joshua,
Okay.
you guys have a question in the Q&A section.
Okay, Joshua. For some reason, you get promoted to panelist when I click on talking, but I'll take you off the panel. But you are able to talk now.
Okay, so I had two questions. One is a consumer. I moved into a property in January where I tried to start service, and it turns out that there's 1 meter for a commercial property and a residential property. I'm a little concerned that when the commercial property, if they potentially leave, and if my landlord stops paying for that service, that I would have to be paying for a commercial property. I don't really understand how the sizes of the pipes work or anything like that. As a consumer, it's going to doubly affect me, right? Which is something I have no control over because it was never articulated to me. And so that's the economic question. And then the other one is the infrastructural question around looking at the, kind of worst case scenario FEMA flood map. It looks like, all the way up to Samoa Boulevard could potentially be, the red zone. What plans do we have in place for, remediating some sort of catastrophic rise in tide or even king tides and things like that?
Okay, that's a good question. I mean, part of the upgrade project involves some upgrades to the existing levees that surround the treatment plant to bring it up to FEMA flood standards, not necessarily for sea level rise projections decades down, but we have modeled both. We're applying for grant funds for that. I hope we could, the more grant funds we can pull down during this period, the less impact on rates we'll see. So I don't want to be over optimistic there, but we are going to be trying, and we've done a pretty good job so far in terms of how many millions we've been able to pull to this project. Yeah, the wastewater treatment plant, it's all gravity flow to that spot. So it's in a vulnerable location currently for tsunami inundation, for high tides and storms. So we did rock line the oxidation pond levees years ago, but there's going to have to be some improvements invested in there. We even looked at treatment plants in Amsterdam and the Netherlands. I mean, you could engineer anything almost in terms of, making an island for a wastewater treatment plant if you had to, but we have a plant there. If we were going to build a new plant, if this was a brand new treatment plant project, we wouldn't choose that location. But there's a lot of investment there currently in the pipes that lead there, in the wetlands that we've constructed there, in the wildlife area that's created in part by using treated wastewater and to treat wastewater. So that took a couple of years to analyze, kind of a gut check. Do we invest in this site for the future? And
what does the modeling look like on that for, a hypothetical, like worst case scenario?
For sea level rise or for a tsunami? I mean, a tsunami is probably not such a concern because that's an event that hits and then it's over and then you recover. Sea level rise is a changed condition daily. You know, it's a totally different story. So, you know, we're looking at all sorts of concepts. We're going to be piloting what we call living shorelines around the oxidation pond levees, trying to get more salt marsh, high salt marsh to stick there and grow to create more buffer, natural buffer that has you know, environmental benefits compared to a rock wall or a sea wall where the waves just slap up against and there's no transition zone.
Yeah.
So we're going to be working on that. Maybe we're looking at obtaining dredge spoils possibly from the harbor district in the future to help jumpstart that process. So there's a lot of design possibilities there to prolong the site as a viable place to treat wastewater into the future.
And what is that looking like with the current state, though, especially given, you know, those sort of models? Like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
Oh, in terms of no
viability of the current site under, you know,
longer. I would say 50 to 70.
Okay. Well, then we won't be squabbling over, you know, 30% at that point.
No, but we have to pay attention about where the plant could go in the future. You know, I don't have the site plan up there, but it's a sprawling complex now with all those wetlands that are part of it, right? Mm-hmm. Possibly, you know, one scenario would be in the future when it becomes too difficult to protect all that complex, you shrink the footprint to a core area, which is where the cluster of, you know, the infrastructure is currently, you know, for the treatment plant. So you go from 100 plus or 100 acres to, you know, 12, and then it would become more of a traditional treatment plant that would be armored, completely armored and raised and sealed to get, you know, several more decades of use there. I mean, it's possible the treatment plant could be the anchor for the city in keeping South G Street, the whole neighborhood, viable into a changed future condition with sea level rise, right? Because you need the access road in, mm-hmm. and you need the pipe network coming in. So that could anchor, you know, protecting a larger area of South G Street that would kind of be, you know, tied into the treatment plant for the future. But those are very good questions. I mean, the city council at our workshops that we had on this, that's a top level question, and it's also an issue with permitting with the Coastal Commission, not for just our plant, but for plants all up and down the coast. I mean, you have to be, you can't ignore the science, and we have no you know, illusions about the fact that, you know, sea level rise is occurring now, and there's never been any new model that's shown us that it's better than we thought it was going to be. I should say it seems to always be, you know, worse. Every model that gets more refined and developed. So.
Okay, and sorry, and I just wanted to go back to my original question. So, as a consumer, you know, in a residential property, my property management company apparently has a meter that a residential and a commercial property are both on one meter. And I found this out when I was trying to start water service. So I'm just concerned if, you know, they decide to stop paying for water, or if the commercial business, you know, goes out of business or something like that. What could I do as a consumer to do anything about that? Or is that something I should just ask the building department directly at some point? It's just an edge case situation, but it's what I have to deal with right now.
Yeah, I think I might make sure we get your number and take that one offline just to make sure. Unless Andre or Darcy want to tackle that right now.
I can just send a message.
Yeah, I would say Joshua, email finance@cityofarcata.org. Or you could certainly give us a call on the main line, any day, and we could definitely let you know your options.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I forgot to give out those emails early. My email is mondre@cityofarcata.org. Or our department is the Environmental Services Department is eservices@cityofarcata.org. So feel free to follow up, phone calls or emails. Another question came in about Coastal Commission approval. Yes, yeah, we have our coastal development permit that's in process along with our environmental document. Yes, there's that for the improvements there. We've learned a lot looking at other permits for similar situations in other parts of the state. I mean, treatment plants require upgrading periodically. We've done minor upgradings. The last major upgrade we did, I think, was 1980, maybe 81. I think the digester there were some major upgrades there on the sludge digester. One thing about the high rate treatment with an oxidation ditch, we're going to have more sludge to deal with. Currently, it's just kind of lost in the oxidation ponds, but we hope to burn up that legacy load of sludge with the new aerators. But with the ox ditch, we're going to have more sludge to mix with shipyard waste, green waste. We do sludge composting at the treatment plant rather than landfill that as a waste product. And then so we'll have to increase, there's some increased costs in handling sludge and composting it and then trucking it to a site for application. Forgot to mention that. Okay. We check the question list here. Don't see any new ones. Let's see. Thanks for bearing with us on this, as you're not used to conducting a workshop this way. It seems like we have Zoom meetings all day long, small task groups and city teams, but a public one like this is a little different. So hopefully by the next one, we'll be able to be a little more savvy tech-wise. So Andrea, do you have anything to add at this point?
No, I mean, just overall, I think you've summarized everything very well, and that a lot of legwork went into providing the consultants with the correct inputs and evaluating just overall to make sure we have a 5-year rate study that makes the city sustainable for the next, 30 years for the wastewater treatment plant at the very least, but just making sure that we're being prudent financially with the rate increases and making sure that we're covering our operating costs and our capital projects.
Yeah, thank you for that. When you have a $7 or $8 million item that has a design life of 30 years, and then really you have to build in the ability to replace it, which means, having the revenue to support that rather than getting to that point and then having to take drastic action. So our intention here is to maintain healthy reserves, not just for unforeseen circumstances. Like we had a large pump station on Samoa Boulevard a few years ago that we had to take emergency action with, and we were glad we had reserves, because that took like 60 or 70% of the entire city's wastewater flow. So we had to replace it, the pumps and that. So we don't want to be in the situation where we couldn't, deal with that. So replacing aging infrastructure, it's not always easy to know how long it's going to last. I mean, our crews have done a great job, our operators and our utility crews, in extending the life of our treatment plant far beyond, what's the normal expectations. Our consultants were surprised, and that's investing in preventative maintenance. So that's a cost that pays dividends and has for the city for a long time. So there's a lot of costs that go into both these utilities, in terms of our permit fees, in terms of our lab testing, in terms of making sure we have operators trained, certified to run the treatment plant, to respond to issues in the middle of the night. There's the plant, and then there's the collection system, where we have potentials for sewer backups, storm events, and plugs. So there's cammering all the lines, replacing them. We did the major lining project this year. I'm sure everybody saw the trucks, the contractors doing that. So that's a major thing. Right now, our treatment plant's, with Humboldt State on a low use period, we're probably treating 1 million gallons a day. That's pretty low. There are times in the winter, through inflow and infiltration, where our treatment plant spikes up to 7, 8, 9, 10 million gallons a day, and a lot of that is rainwater that infiltrates into the pipes. Preventing that saves a lot of money, and it saves the design capacity and cost for the treatment plant if we can prevent that inflow and infiltration. And it just carves out more space for future development in the city, as we anticipate over the years through our general plan projections. So we want to make sure we have ample treatment capacity for the city's projected growth, so we can have thriving businesses and residential areas, and not hit an endpoint there. That's, at the same time, we're not designing a plant that's expecting a huge increase in future growth in the city, but it's on that 1% per year kind of anticipation. And just to emphasize again, the phase 1 will inform phase 2. Some of those improvements show what we think they'll show in terms of compliance and water quality benefits and treatment improvements. It could scale down what we do in phase 2, which could reduce the costs later on, which can be passed on anytime if we're able to save money through grants or through innovative design parameters. But right now, we have the design, but we have the costs, and that's what for us to get the loans, which are like a debit card almost. We'll draw on them as needed. We don't have to spend it all at once. We can be prudent that way. But we had to create a rate structure that would service the debt for what the design costs are being projected to us or told to us will take to pull off the upgrade project. So all our capital projects are listed also on the city's website. It's embedded in the city's budget process, which the city's going through right now for this next fiscal year. There was a 5-year capital improvement plan update that went to the Planning Commission, I think last month. We have that available too. It lists each discrete project, not just for water and wastewater, but for parks and facilities, and transit and other city divisions and activities. Okay, looks like there's still 12 people here. Thanks for hanging this long. If I don't get a question here soon, and please, if anybody wants to speak who didn't before until I could figure out how to answer it live, please raise your hand. And I'll check with my admin assistant to see if there's any other calls that came in. 1 sec. Good. Okay. Okay, no other calls. I didn't want to leave anybody hanging. So with that, I think we'll wrap this up, and feel free to contact us. Oh, there's a hand up. Sorry.
The participation.
Okay. Alex Stillman, I've unmuted you. I see your hand up.
I thought I know many years ago we were really dealing with all the infiltration that was coming in, and we had a lot coming in through Sunnybrae. And I thought we had been working on fixing those issues and actually taking the drains, the gutters and drains from the buildings out of the sewer system. And has that not happened? Because you were just talking about infiltration and the difficulties with it. And we know we had a lot of that. And I remember in the 80s, possibly, when there was a lot of smoke coming out of people's gutters because they did studies. Is that happening anymore? Because then we could really figure out where that infiltration is coming from and get rid of it.
Yeah, it's a good question. Infiltration, whether it's through our sewer mains underground, which is mostly groundwater that infiltrates into the pipes. The non-pressurized pipes, they basically, it's a vacuum, so it sucks it in through the joint. Inflow happens perhaps if a flood on top of a manhole cover has water going in. We've been raising our manholes around the city so that they're not, going to catch rainwater. And we've also been actively requiring private sewer laterals to be replaced or tested and replaced if they're non-functioning. And there's been a lot of work in that regard. New remodels of a certain scale require a sewer lateral, private one, to be tested and replaced if it's not up to standards. And at the time of sale for a property, the same thing has to happen. If it's an over 20-year-old sewer lateral, and then you get a certificate, so that's helped. In terms of sump pumps or roof gutters that are wired into the sewer system that we don't know about, that's not legal. I mean, if we find out about those, they have to be disconnected. We put out education about that, and periodically we notify a neighborhood and blow smoke, non-toxic colored smoke through, or colorful smoke like pink or purple into the pipes, and if it pops out on somebody's front lawn, then we know their sewer lateral is broken. If it comes out on their roof line, then we know their rain gutters and downspouts are connected to the sewer. Could be through their lateral, and that's usually the case. That adds a tremendous amount of water. If a 1-inch rainstorm, for example, goes over Sunnybrae and hits a roof, that's a direct shot to the treatment plant. There's no reason for us to be treating rainwater. It's an expense. So anyway, yeah, we plan to do more smoke testing, and when we find it a connection, our building officials are aware of that too when they go out for inspections. A lot of people aren't aware of it. It was a way to get rid of water years ago. We'll just put it into the sewer, and it'll just go away. But it's much better to take it, sink it, and spread it, stormwater, and not hardwire it into the treatment plant. So
I think that was the way developers did it, and I think it was probably a prescription that was used nationwide. And that's definitely caused us issues. And that's why we have those overflows going into the treatment. You mentioned whatever, mentioned now 60 million, whatever, over what let's say it was 30, and now when it rains it's 60. Well, that's ridiculous for us to have to figure out how to pay for that.
Yeah. Going from 2 million to 8 million gallons a day, it's mostly from big pipes sucking in groundwater. Downspouts could be part of it, and when we find those, we send out letters, and then we have some education on that too. We teamed up with Baykeeper for something. We need to do more of that. Keep doing more of that. Kits for disconnecting your downspout.
Okay.
So since we're talking about that, the other thing is we're getting a lot of wipes in the system, and some of the vendors even call them flushable, but it's rare that any of them are flushable. They aren't. That's just not true. Unless it's toilet paper, they're not flushable. So we're getting many wipes, those durable, disposable. They should go in the garbage can, but they're ending up in being flushed into the sewer system. And those things wrap around the propellers of the impellers and the pumps and the motors, and they're just a nightmare for our crews to have to pull out of the piping system. They clog. They can cause an upset, and an upset sounds like a minor thing, but if it's a couple thousand gallons, pops out of a manhole, goes into the curb, goes straight into a creek, goes into Humboldt Bay, shuts the bay down for a day or two due to bacteria concerns for the oyster industry. It can be a big deal, and we can have monetary fines for that. So yeah, please tell your friends and family flushable wipes. There's no such thing. They should, except unless it's toilet paper. All those.
If I'm still, the first time I read about it was in Charleston, North Carolina, and they had divers spending 3 days unclogging the outlet to let the water go through with all wipes. And I came and talked to you at the city council meeting about that. And now recently I noticed that you actually have ads about it in the paper not to be doing that. I had some tenants that thought there was nothing wrong with it because it said flushable wipes, but my plumber had to take out 60 of them, and one of the toilets had stopped functioning. So I'm really glad to see the city is paying attention to that.
Thank you, Alex. So everybody who's still in the room is unmuted. So anybody wants to talk, I believe you're all able to.
Well, maybe it's over. And if it's over, then I'm going to leave the meeting if it's done.
Okay, I think then we'll conclude. Darcy, Andrea, anything else to add?
Well, thank you very much for doing it, and goodbye.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
I don't have anything else to add. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. All right, thanks for all the participants, and please give us a call for additional questions. And July 1st is the hearing date, so there's plenty of time for us to engage and inform you if we can. Thank you.